Understanding the goals of stakeholders is crucial to take decisions in an inherently uncertain environment. Big data stimulates changes and potential changes, thereby creating both risks and opportunities for stakeholders. In order to introduce the goals of stakeholders, I start by showing how different stakeholders can be, then that goals of stakeholders vary as well, and eventually turn to some examples. The triple helix model is one way to distinguish stakeholders. It differentiates three areas, that is, industry, government, and research. In line with this, we have stakeholders from the industrial area, for example, private firms, stakeholders from the public area, for example, city councils, and stakeholders from the research area, for example, universities. As varied as stakeholders are their goals. While we can distinguish two general kinds of goals, that is, private versus public goals, in reality, we face quite some mixtures of them. Under private goals, we summarize objectives aiming at individual advantages, such as private profit or employment. Public goals point at gains for communities of people, such as producing public goods, for example, by providing an education system, not only benefiting individuals, but also the group they belong to, as educated people usually create more value-added products or services for their community. There are examples of private or public organizations going for clear-cut private or public goals. Often, companies aim at private goals, such as profits only. In contrast, there are governmental agencies only aiming at public goals, such as schools providing education for children. However, nowadays, we often face mixed forms of combined private and public goals, for example, in the form of social or civic entrepreneurs. Think of civic communities organizing their energy production locally with windmills. By using big data-based smart grid solutions, these civic communities can jointly own some local windmills and produce some, or even more, than the energy they need. Their private goal is to produce energy that is reliable and affordable, and possibly even sell some of it to make a profit. Their public goal is to produce energy in a climate-friendly and sustainable way. Usually, it is easy to come up with examples of private companies aiming at private goals only, such as Amazon or Twitter. Such companies are stock exchange listed and usually aim at high revenues for their shareholders. It is also rather easy to come up with examples of organizations driven by public goals, such as the City of Amsterdam with its Smart City initiative that started in 2009. Therewith, the City of Amsterdam aims at reducing traffic, saving energy, and improving public safety. One tool to this end has been the annual Amsterdam Smart City Challenge, accepting proposals for applications and developments fitting within the city's Smart City Initiative framework. Recently, a resident winning this competition developed an app called MobiPark, which allows owners of parking spaces to rent them out to people for a fee. When looking into the goals of the stakeholders, you see that this example is a bit more complicated than the examples of purely profit-oriented companies. The app benefits the private goals of people renting out their parking spaces and those hiring them. On top of that, the app contributes to the public goal of the city, as the data generated from it can be used to regulate parking demand and traffic flows in Amsterdam. Research organizations might use big data to solve societal problems, for example, by finding treatments for diseases such as dementia, increasingly emerging in our aging societies in Western industrialized countries. Currently, a PhD student at the University of Groningen investigates how changes in language can help diagnosing dementia. While you need to store and analyze huge amounts of data on language use of patients to diagnose dementia, it is much more inexpensive and at least as reliable as taking MRIs. Again, here you have a mixture of public and private goals of different stakeholders at play. But why is it so important to be able to determine the stakeholders and assess their goals? Normally, companies are embedded in an environment of various stakeholders with different goals. As big data leads to many changes in companies' environments, knowing about stakeholders' goals helps them to understand and even forecast their actions and reactions in an inherently uncertain environment. This, in turn, helps firms to develop their strategies and guide their decisions.